Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Mark Andre Show, everyone. It is Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. Thank you for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world. The only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to follow the show, give it a like, share it with whomever needs to hear the truth so we can make America believe again in itself. Why do we do that after yesterday's monologue? Make America believe in itself again. How about that? Hope everyone's ready for the best hour radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go. Let's get right down to brass tacks. Let's not waste any time. We've got so much to go over today, too. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, though, shall we? Is Trump killing his movement, and was Epstein running a Mossad Blackmail Operation? That's what Paul Kirk Roberts asked in his article today. Brilliant piece, by the way. And he asked the following questions. And we all should ask these as well, because we're not given any information about any of this, by the way. He says, we do not discuss whether Epstein was murdered, which was the question at heart of the matter. If he was murdered, why? Was Epstein murdered because he threatened to reveal that he was running a blackmail operation, not a sex trafficking operation? Was he murdered because he had dirt on too many elite Americans? Did the CIA have him murdered as revenge for Israel's spying on the United States? All these are valid questions. Now, the circumstances suggest that he was murdered, if he was even murdered. I don't believe he was murdered. But again, it begs the question. We see the corpse, okay? We're told this is Epstein. Then we figure out that, of course, the recording footage goes off for 1 minute. And at that particular time, anyone could go in, anyone could go out. They could just walk him right out of there. Say, oh, look, here he was, he's murdered, here's a corpse. Just believe what we tell you. How often have we heard that? Again, he's a high-profile prisoner. He was in a suicide-proof cell watched by 2 guards and, of course, security cameras. But, of course, the cameras, we know, weren't functioning properly. Right? For that brief period, of course, in which the time he died. The guards happened to wander off, they fell asleep, whatever the hell story they give us. Security cameras malfunctioned or were turned off. And again, you have no evidence now. In other words, the security failed, of course. Or did it? Did they achieve what they wanted? Did they get Epstein out of that cell, get him somewhere else, send him wherever he is now? I don't believe he killed himself. I don't believe he was killed. He's too high of a profile person. He's too valuable to too many people. I think we all can agree on that. But there is no evidence of suicide. That's the main point. Only assertion by the authorities. And again, how often do authorities tell us the truth? Look at the JFK, MLK, RFK, 9/11, Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, Bashar al-Assad's use of chemical weapons, the lies of Gaddafi, or about Gaddafi, I should say. Just the lies about common history that's happening right in front of our eyes. What's happening in the Middle East right now? We're also being told Ukraine can win this war against Russia. They're able to do it. Look at how well they're deterring them. Time after time, we're told lies about things that happen right in front of our eyes. You're told to look the other way, not ask any questions. Again, the examples of authorities saying the opposite of the truth are endless, of course. We could go into that. We can make complete shows about just that. But if Epstein was actually running, and this is Paul Kirk Roberts again, but if he was actually running an Israeli blackmail operation to ensure American conformity with Israel's policy of expansion in the Middle East, that's the Greater Israel Project, it's absolutely unlikely that, well, he says it's unlikely, any youths below the age of sexual consent were actually present involuntarily. Israel would then likely hire young women rather than jeopardize an important operation, kidnapping underage girls, holding them in sexual bondage, which would then lead to an investigation. And moreover, whether or not the 17-year-old Virginia Guthrie was underage depends on her state of residency. In the United States, we have age varying from 16 to 18 for age of consent. In 31 of the 50 states, the age of consent is 16. 8 of the states, the age of consent is 17. In 11 of the states remaining, the age of consent is 18. So it depends on exactly her state of residency, of course. All this is important information. And again, I'm not saying any of the treatment of these women to use them as sex slaves is obviously appropriate, but the age of consent is arbitrary sometimes. And again, this is why we need an investigation on this. We need to understand this. And I know most of you are sick of me talking about this topic, but it's an important topic for many of the reasons is the fact that our politicians are our elite being blackmailed. That's what you should ask yourself. And again, we can go over this age of consent thing. Paul Craig Roberts goes into it here. I'm not going to bore you with all this. But we have to consider a paradox. An 18-year-old American, a non-adult, cannot purchase alcohol or buy a gun, but can be sent to war as a soldier to kill abroad and die abroad. This just shows how arbitrary these age definitions really are. Again, the narrative that Epstein was running a sex trafficking operation for pedophiles appeals to, obviously, MAGA Americans who see the elite class as corrupt, which they are. As many MAGA Americans are Christian Zionists, which is an oxymoron, I do think. They don't want to hear that Israel was entrapping Americans for blackmail purposes, though. Male-hating feminists also prefer the sex trafficking narrative as it lays blame on men. That it's an interesting point that he brings up. Is it just men? We have many female members of the Congress, of course. Are any of them blackmailed too? We don't know. This is why we need an investigation. Whom was Jeffrey Epstein involved with? Whom did he know? What was actually happening? And again, I told you before, you go to the victims. There are about 200 remaining, I'm told, of the 1,000 or so that we know of. What you do is you go to each victim, you get them to tell their story, you get information, and you figure out if it coexists with someone else's story. Whom did they see? Did they see anybody of prominence? Did they know anybody of prominence? Do they have pictures of themselves? Can you link them with any of this video footage that Jeffrey Epstein certainly had? And don't think for a second that the FBI don't have this information. Of course they do. If that was being recorded, there are tapes, if there are photos, if there are any of this information, the FBI has them. Don't think otherwise. Again, emotions and indoctrination predispose much of what the public is to see that the Epstein saga as a underage sex trafficking business. That's what we're being told by the media, by the way. This is what they're saying. And again, he was arrested for it in Florida. So it makes sense to tell us this. His madam, or whatever the hell you call them. I mean, she was really a pimp, I guess you would call that. Ghislaine Maxwell was sent to jail for, what are the following? She was sent for several different things. Let me see here. She was sent to jail she was guilty of sex trafficking, that's number one. Sex trafficking of a minor. So again, it's not unheard of this happened. She was charged with it. But is that the main conspiracy behind this entire thing? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Conspiracy to entice minors to travel for illegal sex acts and conspiracy to transport minors for criminal sexual activity. So she was charged with all this. And again, obviously at the behest of who? Jeffrey Epstein? Elite donors? Elite politicians? Elite businessmen? Who? And again, if she's being charged with this, there has to be someone she's doing this for. Is it just Jeffrey Epstein? That's what we need to ask ourselves. So that's why this case really matters. And again, this is why we should be talking about all this. And we should be getting to the bottom of this. No one should be used as sex slaves for any purpose, whether it be for blackmail or whatever. But again, this predisposition protects Israel by dismissing a blackmail operation as, of course, anti-Semitism and a conspiracy theory. So that's how they get around all this. But I found it really odd. Trump was talking about, oh, yeah, we're going to release this. We're going to release this. And then all of a sudden, Netanyahu comes on a Monday. Press doesn't ask about what the purpose of the meeting is. He leaves, and then Trump goes, are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? The guy's been dead for like 6 years. It's over. I mean, there's nothing there. It's a Democratic hoax. And we're all going, what the hell are you talking about? You ran on this. You said you're going to be the most transparent administration in American history. And what do we get? We got nothing. Do we get anything from the JFK files we didn't know before? RFK files, MLK files, anything in 9/11? Anything about what happened in Benghazi and the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi? All this should be well known. All this should be, but it's not. So now the question that remains is whether there are sufficient Americans free of indoctrination and, of course, brainwashing who are capable of rational analysis instead of the typical emotional responses to ever even reach the truth about anything. Now, if a person reads a comment section on certain articles and podcasts that are posted, he or she sees a lot of emotion and very little thought most of the time. Now, a person that discovers people that follow websites, podcasts, social media, that support what they already believe, they tend to like it, they follow it. And again, that makes sense. You like being reinforced your thoughts. It makes you think you're real smart, doesn't it? But the truth of the matter is, we don't have the information yet. We don't have all this information. I always tell you, ask questions. What makes sense here? We know that this is Epstein now. We know that Epstein has relationships with many prominent Israeli figures. Ehud Barak being one of them. There's many more. I think he knew 4 different prime ministers very well. He knew one of the presidents very well. He is Jewish, so it's not unheard of. But again, that begs the question, is there something else going on here? How did this guy get all this money? Why are prominent people like Les Wexner giving him, I think, a $77 million mansion after he's found guilty in Florida of sexual abuse of a minor? Well, again, it's all very odd. How did this guy make his money? The question remains. Now, again, there are not many whose beliefs are based on objective analysis of facts. That's why you listen to my show. You want to hear the truth. You don't want to hear just nonsense and drivel. Now, indeed, the facts are becoming harder to ascertain, again, because we don't have any information being brought to us. But how likely is it that a majority can arrive at the truth of any issue? Let's be realistic with ourselves here. What's going on here? Now, again, first things first, I thought there was nothing, right? It was supposed to be a Democratic hoax. Why are we still talking about Epstein? He's dead. And forget about it. We're winning. Look at all the things we're doing. We'll point to the economy. We'll point to this. We'll point to the border. All right, but back to reality. They stonewall us for months despite releasing these files being released. And it goes a major campaign promise. Why do they talk about this if there's nothing there? Again, why go out and say we're going to release this, and then give us nothing? Right? They had that phase 1 where every single page was redacted. It's got black ink all over it. We're like, what the hell's this? What are we doing here? I thought we were going to be transparent. And again, don't forget JFK, RFK, MLK. Have you seen anything? Have you learned anything new? Of course not. So now we have issue. We have the House Oversight Committee. There's supposed to be, obviously, this investigating body of the federal government to hold them accountable. They released these 20 to 23,000 page documents containing emails. Again, some 1,600 of a few thousand contain President Trump's name. So now we have all these, controversial remarks regarding President Trump and someone named Bubba. That's been the big one everyone's been talking about. Very awkward, of course. But again, I saw nothing of admission or proof of guilt in any of these emails. At least not yet. So again, the idea that there are a few things happening here, and let me tell you why. Why is he now coming out in support of this? Now, again, the House, per his request, are now holding a vote to release these files. Right? He came out on Truth Social, again, all of a sudden, eager to release them. What did he say? I'll read you part of it. He says, as I said Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. And it's time to move on from this Democratic hoax perpetuated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great successes of the Republican Party. And he goes on to say this and that and all this. Okay. So he's encouraging the vote. And then the rest of the text or the tweet or whatever the hell you call it, he's talking about what the Trump administration's done. But he ends by saying this. Let's start talking about the Republican Party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is in quotes, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. Make America great again. So if there's nothing there, if there's nothing to hide, then why are we not releasing this? This is the question you have to ask yourself. What was he protecting? Who is he protecting? Is he protecting himself? Is he protecting people he knows? Is he protecting the Republican Party? Who is he protecting here? Is he protecting Israel? I don't know, but it's a good question. So what changed, though? Why all of a sudden is President Trump behind releasing these files? Which, by the way, he can just instruct Pam Bondi to do right now. He could have done it that Friday. He could have said, release the files. He doesn't need to wait for a vote in the House. But this is the game that they are playing. Okay, so release it. Release it right now as I'm talking to you. Let the chips fall as they may. Or again, are we going to see redactions? Probably likely. Or say that, hey, we're still investigating this. It's ongoing, so we can only release some of the files. Is that the way it's going to go? We know that Maxwell is obviously appealing her case. Is that what they're going to use? Is, hey, we can't release all this information? Who knows? I mean, at this point, who knows? But again, we have 1,000 young women, or at least we had them. We have about 200 now. But there are roughly 1,000 women involved in all this. You're telling me we can't get some information? Has anyone been arrested? Has anyone even been charged with anything? Of any kind of wrongdoing? Nothing. Why hasn't the DOJ put forth any type of investigation to get to the bottom of this? Why did Pam Bondi tell us that she had a black book sitting on her desk for review? That's what she said. Okay, so you have a list of names. Can you confirm to us that these people have done nothing wrong? Can you tie any of them to doing any wrongdoing in any of these locations in the United States at the behest of Jeffrey Epstein? Again, it's a very honest question. Can we do this? Again, I told you before she was found guilty of sex trafficking of a minor, conspiracy to entice minors to travel for illicit sex acts, and illegal sex acts, and conspiracy to transport minors for criminal sexual activity. So, if she's being charged with this, is it just Epstein that she's doing this with? Or is it that for other people? We should have answers to this. But again, Paul Craig Roberts brings up the bigger question. Is this the foreign state? And again, he's saying it's Israel. And again, because Epstein has ties to the state of Israel, and again, its leadership. If our politicians are being bought off, if they're being coaxed to vote a certain way, put certain policies, give certain amounts of foreign aid, all this stuff, if this is happening, we should also know about this. Whom are these people? Who are these politicians? What information is there? Have they done anything wrong? Because we shouldn't be represented by people that have done this. So while some people think, well, it's not a big deal, it is a big deal. It is a big deal for several reasons. One, we should know everything about our politicians. That's number one. Number two, if they've done anything illegal, they should be charged for it. No one's above the law. And three, is a foreign nation conducting our foreign policy at the behest of blackmail? Of both parties, by the way, not just the Republican Party. That's the big question you should be asking yourself. So while I wish I had better news and everything's going to be great about this and that people are going to go down, has anyone been arrested? Not a single person. Not a single person. Will anybody be arrested? Probably not. They would have done it by now, probably. They've had all these years of data. And you can't link anybody to any type of wrongdoing? Come on. Come on, folks. Let's be realistic about this. But again, this is what they're dangling in front of us. Oh, we're going to release the files. We're transparent. Nothing's going to happen here. I don't think. Anyways. Another big story, though, relating to a similar topic, Jeffrey Epstein. I know you're so sick of hearing about Jeffrey Epstein. I know, too. I don't like talking about him either, but this is the news. This is what's going on in our government right now. New York Post wrote this. House Democrat exchanged texts with Epstein on how to hurt President Trump during 2019 congressional hearings. And it obviously is corroborated now that Jeffrey Epstein was feeding questions to Representative Stacey Plaskett during a 2019 congressional hearing, actually giving her real-time help on how to damage President Trump's reputation, is what newly released documents show. Now, there was a text exchange between the two. And again, it shows that the convicted pedophile pontificating with Plaskett during a February 27, 2019 House Oversight Committee hearing, in which the then former president's ex-attorney Michael Cohen testified about Trump's alleged payments to mistresses to silence stories before the 2016 election. Trump obviously vehemently denying all these allegations. But what was Epstein telling her to do? While they're sitting there on television, she's sitting there texting him back and forth while bringing up while Cohen brought up former Trump executive Ronna Graff in his testimony. Why did he do that? Well, because Plaskett was told by Epstein to do that. He wrote, Cohen brought up Ronna, keeper of the secrets. Epstein texted Plaskett, and she wrote back, Ronna? And then he said that's his assistant. Then he wrote back saying that he's opened the door to questions who are the other henchmen at the Trump organization. And then she wrote back, yep, very aware, waiting my turn. Plaskett then began questioning at 2:28. This is at 12:25 p.m. At 2:28, she finally is up to ask questions. And she is asking about Graff now, and other Trump associates Epstein had mentioned in the text. And she says, are there any people we should be meeting with? And then so he says, Ellen Weisselberg, which is the chief financial officer of the Trump organization. And she says, you've got to quickly give us as many names as you can so we can get them. That's what Plaskett says. Is Miss Ronna, what is Miss Ronna? And he says, Ronna Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant, and her office was directly next to his, and she was involved with a lot of what is going on. So they're trying to tie Trump, of course, to silencing women. Isn't that interesting? And then at 2:34 p.m., after she's done with her investigation, her wonderful investigative work, Epstein writes to Plaskett, good work. Again, you have a convicted pedophile feeding information to a delegate in the Congress. She is a delegate for, I believe, where is she from? The Virgin Islands, yep. And exactly where his islands were. Isn't that interesting? And he's buddies with this woman. What the hell does she know? That's what I want to know. So there we go. He's already been convicted of state prostitution charges, and a month later he'll be then charged with sex trafficking of minors. We know that he owned Great St. James and Little St. James, where, again, her delegation is of. And again, the nexus of this sex trafficking operations is what we're being told. How much blackmail went on down there? One can only know. Now, again, Plaskett initially denied comment, but after the newspaper published the stories on Friday night, her office issued a statement confirming that she had contact during the hearing with the former campaign donor to her, I'm sure. Wow. That is a major, major story. You have someone sitting in Congress getting fed questions to damage the sitting president by a convicted sex offender. Oh, my goodness. I mean, again, this is the state of where we are today, folks. This is the state of America right now. We actually have politicians sitting there working with criminals to damage President Trump's reputation. Does anyone see anything wrong with that? I do. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable that we see this information coming out now. I'm sure that's only the tip of the iceberg as well. All right, let's move on. Again, what more to say about that other than how disgraceful? You're going to sit there and chat with a convicted pedophile about taking down the president of the United States? Again, it's mind-boggling at times. Really mind-boggling. I want to move into something else now, though. Let's talk foreign policy. Because we didn't really go over it much yesterday. We didn't get to do much yesterday. So let's go over it right now. All right. So what's going on here with the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine? That's the big question now. Now, as of late, this is in the National, by the way, the U.S. is now circulating a revised draft of the Security Council resolution that would authorize a 2-year mandate for a transitional administration in Gaza. That would be President Trump's Board of Peace, and I guess him and Tony Blair would be running this, and then create an international force to oversee security and demilitarization. Okay, that was part of one of the phases in the 21-point plan. But then it goes on to say, unlike previous drafts, the latest mentions a possible future Palestinian state. Okay, so this was in the plan as well. So is this coming too? Is this actually going to happen? There's now a U.S. mission spokesperson who urged the UN Security Council to unite behind its draft resolution supporting President Trump's Gaza peace plan, warning that Palestinians could face grave consequences if this measure actually fails. So what is actually going on here with this? How far are we moving around this ceasefire? Are we getting progress? Is it null and void? What's going on here? So we know that the U.S. has actually changed the proposal now for the two-state solution by suggesting that if there is reform within the Palestinian Authority, again, which Palestinian and Gazans don't really want to be ruled by, that's why they elected Hamas, and Israel has stated there will never be a Palestinian state. So where are we in this progress? Is something actually going to happen? Who is going to rule over Gaza? Is it going to be President Trump and Tony Blair? Nobody knows. But again, don't take my word for it that Israel does not want a Palestinian state. This is Netanyahu himself stating exactly what I'm telling you.
I want to address two specific topics. The first topic is the alleged demilitarization of the part of Gaza that is under Hamas control. There was no such thing. Even in the 20-point plan and in everything else, this area will be demilitarized and Hamas will be disarmed. Either it will happen the easy way or it will happen the hard way, as I said, and as President Trump also said. And regarding the Palestinian state, our opposition to a Palestinian state on any territory west of the Jordan remains. It is firm and unwavering. It has not changed in the slightest. I have been fending off these attempts for decades now, doing so in the face of both external and internal pressures. So I do not need encouragement, tweets, or lectures from anyone.
Okay. So there he is, just telling you right out, flatly telling you, there's not going to be a Palestinian state. They're not going to allow it. He's been fighting for it for decades against this idea that there will be a Palestinian state and, of course, giving up land. We have Itamar Ben-Gvir repeated the same type of sentiments of Prime Minister Netanyahu, adding that there are no Palestinians. That's what he said. There's no Palestinians, so how could there be a Palestinian state? Okay, so again, who are you fighting in Gaza? That's the thing. What's this whole thing about? If there are no Palestinians, what's this all about? What's this ceasefire? What's happening in the West Bank? Can anyone answer this for him? All right. I mean, forget the fact that the IDF are still killing Gazans when they're supposed to have been evacuated from the region, right? They're behind the yellow line as right now, but they're still killing people. President Trump has said emphatically that Israel will not annex the West Bank. But there are some 400,000 Israelis building settlements there now. as we speak. There's violence there is off the charts. Burning villages, burning olive trees, obviously Christian cemeteries like the St. George Cemetery. But if this is happening, why isn't President Trump stopping this from happening? Again, talk is cheap. He said, we're not going to let them annex it. He said that unequivocally. But why isn't he stopping this then? Why are we still allowing this? That's the big question. And again, while it's written and acknowledged by the UN and 180 different UN member states, right, this push for a Palestinian state, the only country that, when put to a vote, vetoes the creation of a Palestinian state is the United States. Just don't forget that. So if we're serious about this, if we're serious about this advancement of peace in the region, which everybody wants, I know I want that. The idea is this two-state solution. That's what most people agree would be the best thing to do. Give the Palestinians land of their own to govern themselves. Now, the people on the opposing side of this will say, well, here's what's going to happen. You have Hamas as leadership, who are militants that are going to come in and then continue to kill and attack Israel. And we can't have that because it jeopardizes the national security of Israel. And there might be a valid point in that. But the idea, too, we have to understand, if they are given a state of their own to have their own land, to not worry about any type of occupation or what have you, and again, if the Muslim states in the region, the United States in the region, are going to ensure peace between the two nations, that changes everything. I think. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I know those are the two arguments. So what was the whole idea of the October 7th attacks? It was to get leverage, obviously, to release various hostages that Israel's holding without any type of charge. And again, it pushes forth the idea that there could be a territory, a future state for the Palestinians. So now, while most people think, well, it was just, Hamas going in and killing people, that's what the whole purpose was, to get as many hostages as they could. Because that was their leverage. Now they've agreed to this 21-point peace plan. And again, the end of it, it talks about a Palestinian state. So they got, obviously, rewarded by this whole thing. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, who's the real winners here? I mean, if they're going to get their hostages back, if they're going to get a state of their own, that was the whole purpose of why they did this. So again, it's very interesting to see how this is going to turn out. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Israel will let it happen. But that's, again, the proposal that's being put forward. As flimsy as it is, that's what's being pushed forward. But again, it looks like the United States wants to build another $500 million military base on the border of Gaza. Now, the U.S. military is denying this, but I've heard this from several prominent people now that also want to build in Damascus as well. It's very interesting. Isn't it interesting? They always have money for war, but they don't have money for you, ever. Another $500 million military bases in the Middle East. Again, maybe that's why President Trump invited the head and hand chopper, al-Shara, last week, right? He invited an ISIS terrorist to the White House, said he's a great guy, he's doing great things in Syria. Is he? Is he really doing that? I mean, right now they're killing Christians in Syria. Nobody bats an eye to that. Well, but they're killing Christians in Nigeria as well. Then everyone gets upset. They flip out about this. Now, forget the Kurds, the Kurds are in that region. The Alawites, the Druze populations there as well, also under siege by this new administration, by a guy who's not even Syrian. Again, it makes absolutely no sense to me that we allow this into the White House. By the way, this guy has killed Americans. He was on the terror watch list. He had a $10 million bounty on his head. Now, all of a sudden, he's great. He's a great guy. Look at him. David Petraeus thinks he's a great guy. Everyone thinks he's a great guy. Well, I doubt the families of slain Americans think he's a great guy. bunch of other people in the region now who are getting killed by him think he's a great guy. But he's the guy, he's the useful idiot that's going to play ball with the United States. He's the guy that's going to let them build a military base, more than likely in Damascus, that we couldn't get before. So that's where we are in the Middle East now, folks. We still have Palestinians getting killed. The ceasefire seems to be falling apart. We might get a Palestinian state. Should the Palestinian Authority reform itself? What does that mean? Reform themselves how? It's... I don't know. I don't know why we can't get forward progress on this. Why this violence cannot stop. Again, I think you're going to see things heat up sooner rather than later with Iran. Don't ever forget Israel has Iran in their purview. Don't ever forget that. All right, moving on. What happened today with Cloudflare, by the way? This Cloudflare, it's an internet service outage took place over X, Spotify, and ChatGPT, among other things like Uber. What is this? Google Store, DoorDash? Oh, Amazon too. That's no good. You can't go buy cheap Chinese goods if you don't have your access to Amazon. Well, what happened? What's going on here with all this? I mean, people wake up and see that this has been shut down. So just to understand, Cloudflare is an internet management company that is kind of like this cybersecurity outlet that kind of overlooks all of these sites. And according to USA Today, a fix has been implemented and Cloudflare believes the outage is resolved. But they're continuing now to look and monitor for any type of errors to ensure all services are back to normal. Well, thank God for that. But it caused some traffic passing through Cloudflare's networks, experiencing errors. They don't know the cause, though, of the spike in unusual traffic. But we are all hands on deck to make sure that the traffic is served without any type of errors. And, of course, after that, we'll turn our attention to investigating the cause of this unusual spike in traffic. So what is unusual traffic? Well, in cybersecurity terms, that means the network activity is deviant from any type of normal patterns they are used to monitoring. So this might indicate something like malicious behavior, misconfigurations, compromised systems. There could be something like unfamiliar IP addresses, something coming in from foreign servers, or any type of malicious domains. That could be another thing. You can also think about things like cyber attacks on the websites, any type of malware, which are virus infections that go onto the computers or which are being used. Think of the finances that are being used, or any type of unauthorized access attempts to these network servers. So that's why all that went down, and I know some people are listening, of course, on Spotify. Hopefully that'll get back up today. But isn't that interesting? We've seen this now time and time again. We saw this under the Biden administration. We saw that taking down of various internet providers under the Biden administration. Thankfully, I mean, I guess at the bare minimum, at least they caught it before anything terrible could have happened. But again, who would try to do this to us? Who would try to shut down these access to these websites? Again, right around the holidays. Makes you wonder, folks. Makes you wonder who could have done this. Now, I know people have certain ideas of who this could have been. But never forget, there are people that want to take us down out there. There are people that want to do harm. They want to hack in. They want to mess with people's accounts and what have you. We've seen this before. So at least, at the bare minimum, Cloudflare at least stopped this from advancing to something much, much worse. And as time goes on, as they investigate this, hopefully we'll figure out who the culprits were about this. But just think, who would like to take the U.S. down? Just ask yourself that question. All right, moving on. This is in the Gateway Pundit. What do we got here? Well, it's our friend from Syria, Al-Shara. Oh, what a great guy. What a wonderful, wonderful guy. So wonderful that he made the Gateway Pundit today. And he says that no positive way forward, no democracy, no rights for minorities under extremist government. Well, I mean, if you were listening to President Trump, you'd say, well, my God, this guy's great. Trump says he's great. I like Trump. He's great. Give him a pat on the back, give him a handshake. He's got a nice suit on. He must be a great guy. He must be. We installed him as the president, right? Wrong. Okay, so get this. Under Syria's new government, minorities, including Kurds, Alawites, Druze, and Christians, are now being persecuted. Get that. They're being killed. They're being driven from their homes. And that's what's being stated by the president of the Alawites Association of the United States. Now, the new constitution drafted under Ahmed al-Shara, whose real name is al-Julani, but I guess he changed his name. I don't know why. You can't even find the word democracy in the Constitution. Now, I want to remind everybody, we talked about this yesterday. We talked about what a democracy is. And I told you guys that democracy is mob rule. And the reason why our founders didn't want a democracy is because they didn't want 51% of the country to control the other 49. That's why we have a republic. That's why we elect our leaders. We don't want mob rule. That's exactly what they have in Syria right now. Now, again, the minority is now going to be crushing these minority groups within Syria. So now al-Shara became the country's interim president after leading the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is this ISIS coalition of extremist factions that ousted Bashar al-Assad in December of 2024 last year. We're coming up on a year on that, when obviously the al-Assad regime fell. But since then, al-Shara now has tried to keep repackaging himself as an international statesman, even meeting with President Trump at the White House. He was just there last week, right? And again, we could summarize why he probably was there. The United States wants to build a base in Damascus. They want to get him to go along with it. I'm sure he will, because he's a bought and paid for candidate. That's why he's there. And again, the president, Dr. Ibrahim, says, I don't really see that we're on the right path. That really needs to be pointed out to everybody. Well, of course they're not. If they're killing these people, driving them from their homes. I mean, this guy was an ISIS terrorist. Doesn't anybody see a problem with that? Now, according to many accounts, after the collapse of the Assad regime, Syrians briefly believed that a new and more hopeful future was possible. For example, Aram Hanna, a Christian soldier with a Kurdish-led style Syrian Democratic Forces, explained that it was a good choice to kick Assad out after 14 years of fighting, but we have another bigger problem now. Well, of course you do, genius. Because now you have someone that wants to kill everybody that doesn't go along with their ideology. You see how this theocratic regime is working right now. Now, Ahmed al-Shara and his forces advanced quickly, promising amnesty and encouraged soldiers to surrender peacefully. Assad's regime didn't give the full citizenship to Christians or Kurds. Now, it's important to understand, though, even though that the al-Assad regime led a secular government, that's what we should understand. Everyone was simply able to live there. The government was going around and killing people like we're seeing right now. But now we've got a change in the government. Again, welcomed by the minorities right at first, but remain skeptical. Again, because of this allegiance to Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, and other extremist groups. But now we have this brief moment of hope vanishing when, again, these pro-government paramilitaries massacred Alawite civilians on the coast and later attacked the Druze communities. And again, it's getting worse than when Bashar al-Assad was president. So again, the country was under the French, of course, under the French mandate. They were kind of divided into these sectarian states, if you will. That means different various groups are kind of leading themselves in a region. Again, with unequal development, leaving every community suspicious that any central authority would favor one group over the others. That's a problem here. But here we go. Is it getting better or worse? I mean, I think we could say that things are getting much worse as they threaten the Syrian minorities. And again, the ideologies rooted in this group from the old fatwas, we have medieval scholars whose rulings now declare that Alawites, Druze, Christians, and Yazidis could be killed because of their form of worship, which is considered illegitimate. So, again, who's going to protect them? Who's going to come in and save them? Is Donald Trump going to go and save them? Is he going to tell Al-Sharia, hey, stop killing Christians, stop killing Druze, stop killing Kurds, stop killing Alawites, stop killing any other minorities? Obviously not. And again, it's sad to see this. But it's expected when you let ISIS terrorists control the region now, control the country. And only time will tell how really bad this is going to get. I imagine it's going to get much, much worse. But again, ISIS are now more dangerous because we have the Ministry of Defense, the Syrian Ministry of Defense, full of ISIS. So again, this is what's going to be happening. They can move freely. They're not hiding now. They have the weapons. They control everything. They share information. And they go from area to area with all their ability. And in order to add a veneer of legitimacy, they can pretend to be the Syrian army. See how this is all working out? So things are not going to go well for people, especially these minorities in Syria, or anyone that stands up against the government. Again, it's a failed state. It's a now rogue state. It's being led by an Al-Qaeda ISIS terrorist who, again, I told you, he's a head chopper. He chopped up people's hands. He's killed American citizens. American soldiers. Again, they're American citizens. And that's why he was on the America's Most Wanted list for $10 million. Now he's a great guy. And by the way, the Syrian Christian population fell from approximately 1.5 to 2.2 million to about 300,000 between 2011 and 2022. So you're seeing a massive displacement. Where are these people going to go now? They got to flee? They got to go somewhere else? Syria is also it was being struck by bombs by Israel as well. So again, it's a failed region. It's a failed territory. And I think you're going to see a new military base in Damascus. Just my thoughts. We'll start to see that. All right, moving on. PJ Media's got an article. Says Kash Patel drops COVID origin bombshell. Well, at least he's doing something, right? Says here the FBI director Kash Patel dropped a bombshell during a recent interview with Glenn Beck. And anyone who has watched the federal bureaucracy sabotage President Trump at every turn will recognize the pattern instantly. Now, Patel walked through how the Trump administration evaluated intelligence about the virus in the early days and how that assessment collided with a coordinated effort inside the bureaucracy and, of course, the media to protect China, shield Anthony Fauci, and, of course, deny Trump credit for getting it right. Well, again, I question how much he actually got right, since it was he who initiated the first 2-week lockdown. I think it was, 14 days was the first lockdown that he provided. He let Anthony Fauci run roughshod and didn't do anything about it. I mean, again, you could say that Trump is listening to the experts, but what the hell were the experts telling us? That's the question you have to ask yourself. So Patel reminded Beck that the team briefed Trump based on the intelligence they had. Trump listened, weighed in the facts, and acted upon it. Understand this, though. Understand this. Right when we declare this an emergency, only 4,000 people died worldwide in March of 2020. When it was declared a state of emergency, only 4,000 people worldwide died from this so-called SARS-CoV-2. Okay, understand that. Again, this is the height of the virus, by the way. Any coronavirus in the first stages is going to be the most deadly. So at the most deadly portion, and by the way, March of 2020, the virus was in the United States since October of 2019. Yeah, it was. Did anyone notice anything odd during Thanksgiving? Or even Christmas of that year? No, of course not. But all of a sudden in March, it was a pandemic. Excuse me, a pandemic. I don't want to say it was a planned event. But this is what we saw. So again, we're acting on the facts. So, I mean, again, who was telling Trump the facts? Obviously, they weren't telling him the real facts because, again, if you're telling me worldwide 4,000 people died, that's not a pandemic. To qualify as a pandemic, it must be something that is extremely easily transmissible, which, of course, they're claiming it was, and it has to also kill a large majority of the population to be a pandemic. I don't think SARS-CoV-2 qualified, but that's my own opinion. Now, then the usual suspects stepped in after, again, the intelligence briefings took place. We have Fauci coming in, and, of course, the media, saying that, no, it wasn't the Chinese. They'd never do this. It's not about that. It didn't come from there. Then it was the wetback soup or wetback market, something ridiculous along those lines. And then, of course, we remember what went down. Fauci playing the patronizing scientist day in and day out, right? Well, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta wear a mask, you gotta lock down, you can't go to school. If you go to school, you gotta wear a mask, all this other nonsense. Ridiculousness. It was so stupid. Then the 6 feet apart, I mean, it was so stupid. I'm standing outside Whole Foods in a line like, why the hell am I standing here? Why can't I go in the store? I don't give a damn about this. Of course, when you go and you got to wear a mask. Okay. So it's fine for the people that work there to be around all these new people coming in. But again, you all can't be in there at the same time. It's so scary. I mean, the same particles are still flying all around. And in many cases, the size of the virus, which is extremely small, by the way, can travel for up to 90 feet. 90 feet. So you're telling me someone standing across the room isn't going to be affected if you're 6 feet apart? Come on, folks. Let's use our logic here. And, of course, we remember the big tech censorship, right? You were going on social media. You're like, this doesn't make any sense. You had doctors like Dr. Simone Gold who were discussing the efficacy of the mask wearing, which, again, was a bunch of nonsense. And, again, she's getting shut down, of course. Anybody else that had anything of any type of opposition when Anthony Fauci, the great Fauci, was shut down. And we saw that Mark Zuckerberg colluded with that, sending Fauci an email saying, hey, Tony, hey, buddy, what should I do about this? What, you want to shut these people down? Or what? You can't talk about hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. You can't talk about how people with high levels of vitamin C and vitamin D3 levels don't get this. They're not afflicted as badly for those that are deficient in these vitamins. Can't talk about exercise, getting fresh air, sunlight, none of that. No. You got to stay locked down in your house. Look at your ceiling. Don't go to work. Let your business just stay as is. It's a pandemic, folks. And it's here now, for as long as I say it is. I mean, this is treasonous. Is Kash Patel going to arrest any of these people, by the way? Anthony Fauci? Dr. Birx? Was it Deborah Birx was her name? The one that was always wearing the scarf. How about Dr. Francis Collins? Going to arrest him up there with his stupid guitar that's out of tune all the time, singing stupid songs to us? This is the reality of the situation. They let these morons run us into the ground. And they, of course, told us to get a COVID shot, which Trump, of course, spent billions upon billions of dollars giving it to each of these companies to produce, so-called. Now, under my investigation and research, I think that these shots were made well in advance. There's no way these are made at the blink of an eye or warp speed, as we were told, which is really warp the seed. Did I say that out loud? I think I did. Yeah, it's true. These shots are toxic, folks. There's no reason anyone should be taking them. But Trump, again, championed Operation Warp the Seed. And we all know how this went down. Businesses going out of commission, of course, like in states where I was at the time, California. We were told people were essential and non-essential, and of course it was up to the governor's discretion to say which ones were which. It was ridiculous. It was lunacy, the fact that people went along with this. But people, by and large, are, give in to fear. They gave in to the fear-mongering. And they believed it. But this was a concerted effort by so many of the government elite. Patel then told Glenn Beck that he pointed out the bombshell that dropped just a couple of weeks ago. According to him, former CIA Director Gina Haspel authorized 6 case officers and intelligence analysts to be paid off so that they would change their assessment on the COVID origins. What is this? We can't even have a decent research about what's going on or investigation? We got to cover for China? This is treason. And by the way, is Kash going to arrest any of these people? That's my big question. Are you going to arrest Fauci, Birx, Collins, anyone else that lied? Zuckerberg for these algorithms and shutting down free speech? Well, don't hold your breath for too long. You want to pass out. But this is what we're dealing with right now. This is sick. The CIA's institutional decision to spend taxpayer dollars to lie to the world about where this came from. We know what came from a lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, right? And of course, if it's the Fauci narrative that the media wanted out there, along with Gina Haspel, because she didn't want Donald Trump to get credit for reading the right intel. Okay. Well, he still made pretty bad decisions on this. He let COVID destroy his presidency. Any way you look at that. I mean, again, is he going to arrest anybody? This is what I want to know. Are you going to arrest anybody? Patel said this is why relentless oversights matter, because these revelations don't surface unless whistleblowers take risks. And of course, Congress refused to let the bureaucracy bury the fact. Okay. Are you going to arrest anybody or not? That's what I want to know. Are you going to arrest these bastards that lied to us, that destroyed the country, that allowed mail-in ballots so they can cheat and bring in Joe Biden? Are they going to do anything about this? What are you doing, Kash Patel? Come on. He's talking about gaslighting America for years. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Censor the truth. Rewrote intelligence reports. Again, that's fraudulent. Keep Trump from being proven right. Okay, well, who the cares about being proven right? Who is going down for this? This is a deep state corruption from day one. Sickening. Sickening. I can't wrap my head around it. It's so sickening. Again, what's he doing about this? Nothing. I want to say, hey, we're investigating all these people. The people that have wronged us are going down. That would be the right answer. Who's been arrested because of COVID? Nobody. Who's been arrested for orchestrating January 6th? Nobody. Who's been arrested for the 2020 election? Nobody. Oh, some small people. Who's been arrested for any of these other situations? The Epstein files. Anyone? Anyone going down? How about the Russia collusion hoax? Anybody? Anyone getting arrested? I mean, I hate to say it, but what the hell's he doing? Nothing, not a damn thing. All right, let's go over this last article. I got about a minute left before we end today's broadcast. Just the news yesterday said thousands protest crime and corruption in Mexico City and clash with police. I'm sure some of you saw this on social media. I guess the Gen Z movement, which was mainly younger participants, but also some older supporters as well, aligned with the opposition parties. And it looks like they've had enough. They've had enough of this shine bomb government that's protecting the Mexican drug cartels. It's difficult for people now to go back and forth over the border because Donald Trump has shut it down, and rightfully so. But there's been large protests now, young activists, thousands of people filling the streets of Mexico City, standing against crime, corruption, and impunity of these drug cartels, and of course the governments as well. They're also very upset about the murder of, and I want to say his name correctly, that's why I'm looking at this, Carlos Manzo. It was a mayor who called out Sheinbaum for her lack of effort in combating the cartels. And of course, his city in Michoacan, which suffers largely because of this drug cartel violence. And he stood up to this. And he says, we need greater determination from the president of Mexico. vowing not to take a single step back. And he says, I do not want to be just another mayor on the list of those who have been executed and had their lives taken away from them. Saying that he was very afraid, but I must face it with courage. Well, he was killed. He was killed, and the people see this. And what did Scheinbaum do about it? Nothing. Nothing, not a damn thing. Isn't that indicative of all these politicians? They do nothing. They do nothing. They say a lot, but they don't do anything. And the Gen Zers in Mexico, the youths, they've had enough of it. And now they're protesting. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Standing up for what they believe is right. And they are right about this. They shouldn't be governed by the Mexican drug cartels. Come on. It's unbelievable. Folks, hope you enjoyed the show today. Hope you'll share it with some friends. And again, as always, I hope I'll see you here tomorrow, as always, on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, keep your house in order, and God bless.